I'd like to get your take. The Assembly passing their proposal for paid family leave, and something that the governor continues to campaign for. Your thoughts on that, Claudia? And how you feel?
I mean, it's a tough issue. So a lot of people don't realize the family leave bill is actually a payroll deduction.
Right.
So you're paying for it as an individual, an employee.
Is that what the Assembly proposed?
That's the Assembly proposal. Mm-hmm. So it's just one more thing that we take out of your paycheck, take the money, put it in a big pool in Albany, and they decide where the money goes. Mm-hmm. One of the problems I have with it is small business owners, like our business, for example. We like to offer as many benefits as we can to our employees because we need to be competitive in the marketplace.
Sure.
We need to compete for good employees.
Mm-hmm.
And when the government keeps getting in the middle of that, it makes it harder and harder for us to compete.
Right.
When we take a mandate like a family leave or a $15 minimum wage, we don't really pay the minimum wage. We pay more than that. But when you're affecting the whole economy by moving in the government into the market.
Sure.
And I'm not against regulations. I'm for reasonable regulations. But the problem with like a family leave is that you all of a sudden now, what do you do about a small business owner?
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example. When I ran our family business, we had the Penny Saver and the Mid-York Weekly.
Right.
If I had 5 salespeople out of 7 or 8
right.
in a 3-month period,
yep.
our business goes under.
And that could
and everybody else loses their job.
And that's interesting because I've
got to find a substitute to come in and do the sales routes. But what ended up happening is I used to do at times 3 and 4 sales routes when somebody was sick or injured.
So you ran into those situations before?
Right, and it's very, very stressful. I mean, it's very hard. You can't get the revenue that you were getting to pay the bills, to support the business. And so I think that that's one of those things that I would rather see as an option. If a business can afford and be competitive to offer a family leave policy, we want to encourage them and give them the incentives to do that because I think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But if they cannot, I don't think it should be a mandate to force the closure of a small business. So remember, small businesses have the disadvantage of those large, huge, you have the big companies coming in. They can afford the cost of a higher minimum wage, right. And they can afford the cost of family leave and the mandates. The smaller, locally owned and operated businesses would simply close. And so really what you're doing is hurting the little guy.
Again.
With big mandated policies coming from the state. Instead, make this an option so that we can compete in the marketplace for good employees. Mm-hmm. Because somebody may make that decision. Somebody may not care about that. They may say, you know what? I'm going to go to this business because they have paid family leave.
Yeah,
or I'm going to go to this business because of one reason or another. We used to be very competitive in the market because we're in the middle of nowhere, mm-hmm. and yet we offered optical. We offered a health care plan that would give you, if you joined a gym or if you showed that you had certain, dental plan.
Very attractive to
if you did
potential
exercise, we gave you a health club membership. All those things were things that we were able to offer. With the onset of Obamacare, now we have to pay for all these huge things and to meet their standard of what a health care plan is. Not what our employees want, mm-hmm. but what the federal standard is. Now we've moved away from all those things because we can barely afford to support a health care plan that provides the basics that are required by the federal government. Another federal mandate that is not what the employees want.
Right.
It's what the federal government thinks you should want.
And we saw that a little bit here, and luckily it didn't affect us all that much, but we did have to shuffle a bit because, as you mentioned, you don't know any given time that a situation like that can arise where maybe 5 out of your 7 employees are out due to a family leave or a disability or whatever it is. We had here at the radio station 3 or 4 family situations where folks are pregnant. So we saw that recently, and we had to shuffle a little bit with employees because some folks were out for a period of time. And being on the radio, we talked about this yesterday. We're always on. You can't be late. You can't take a week off and still be viable here. So it's a very good point. And going back to the small business thing, again, more of echoing what Vince said, Patrick Vincent said this morning with his small business, same idea, hurting some of the small business owners with some of the taxes or these incentives that are going to the bigger businesses. And he mentioned the same thing, being able to pay his employees a competitive wage, but small things may hurt him or may not allow him to hire an extra employee. So it's a good point.
Yeah, remember this too. We have small businesses in our area. The largest industry in the state of New York is agriculture right now.
Right.
So that would be basically the death knell to the family farm.
Huge. Yep.
And so you're imposing that on family farms, and can you imagine paid family leave?
Already
we're not going to milk the cows for a few days. It's a tough issue, but I say let a business have the freedom to offer that and encourage it and provide incentives to do it, not just a mandate that actually forces closure of businesses. Because as I indicated earlier, NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, can tell you this. 65% of the new jobs created nationally, and something like 70 or 80% in our area, are created by these locally owned and operated businesses. We are a small business community, and the more that we close up our small business community, the more people you're going to see leaving. And New York State lost 160,000 people last year in net out-migration. That just can't. That trend can't continue.
There's a couple of interesting things about that people have to keep in mind. For one thing, when you impose these regulations, that's a cost. Somebody pays for it. None of this stuff is free. And who pays for it? The business doesn't pay for it. They don't have extra money to just pay for these things. So you either cut back on other benefits, which is what Claudia said. Now we can't help them with these other things that they may have wanted, or what do? They have to raise prices, and sometimes that makes them not competitive. The other thing you always have to remember is when New York State imposes these regulations, and they don't have it in Vermont and New Hampshire and Pennsylvania and some of our bordering states, if businesses can, they may move across the border to say, you know what, I can't afford this. I'm going to go to New Hampshire and run my business from there because I can easily do my business from that state instead of New York. And today, with so much electronic communication going on, you can almost operate from anywhere. So New York State can't say we can just impose these taxes on people and they'll have to pay it. They have no alternative. There's lots of alternatives. That's part of the reason on a national level that many of the businesses have gone to Mexico and to China and to Asia, because the cost of paying these people is so much that rather than try to do it, they relocate out. The other thing, and she makes a very good point about this as well, everybody doesn't want that. I mean, somebody might be going in college and they might say, look, I want a job on weekends. I just want to make enough money to supplement my income while I'm going to college. I don't care about family leave and I don't care about health care. I just want some extra money. So I'd like to be able to go to a place like Claudia has and say, look, can you hire me for Saturdays to come in and work for you? And I'm willing to work for a lower wage because I'm not supporting anybody. I just want a little extra money. But then she says, but you have to pay for family leave, you have to pay for Obamacare, all this stuff if I hire you enough hours. And that discourages her from hiring anybody, and it causes people who don't need it to maybe not be able to get a job because she can't afford it. And by
small businesses, the one thing we have to be to survive is flexible. We need to be able to be flexible. We care about our employees. They're vitally important. So we want to provide the flexibility. We want to give them the opportunity to work that out. We used to make schedules, like we'd try to figure out who could sub and who could go pick up the ads or whatever we needed to do. So it is about flexibility and giving them the opportunity to succeed. And that's what the spirit of entrepreneurship is. That's what we're about as a nation. It's so crazy that we get into that. We've got to, there's a perception, and it's a misperception that I have read as in my I'm in my 6th year in the state assembly. Many of the people from, I'd say, downstate New York City area, they think that anybody who's in business is some evil, employee abuser. They're not. They don't understand how.
Cracking the whip.
Yeah, I mean, we have a collaborative situation in our business. We provide a lot of extra benefits to our employees as much as we can, and to not offer what we used to have, like our medical plan was great. We had a cafeteria plan. You could pick this and that, and Mark Wolber does not need to buy gynecological services, but an Obamacare plan requires that we all buy the one-size-fits-all plan. And that goes away from really what makes healthcare affordable. And so we need to go back to deciding what exactly you need. I mean, I know as a 55-year-old woman, there's only certain things that I need. And those are the things I'd like to buy.
Well, being 25, and you just mentioned, see, you like what I just did there?
See, you're not going to need...
but no, you make a good point as far as, I think you need to go back to as far as being mandated and then look at the incentives that you were able to offer or you could have offered an employee, and maybe having to take one of those incentives off the table to be able to fit in the mandate, which right there isn't attractive to an employee or a potential employee.